Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Smith, running for Congress in Washington's 9th District, and I'm here with Ben Cohen, the Ben in Ben and Jerry's.
Hi, everybody. I'm scooping ice cream to support Sarah Smith.
And
you can have your ice cream and Sarah Smith too.
And Ben has been busy traveling the country, going to different progressive campaigns around the nation. So what's the experience been like? What have you seen? What are some things that have stood out to you about traveling the country, talking to different progressive campaigns and candidates?
I've seen some incredibly wonderful, heart-driven progressive candidates. Many of them women of color, that are in this, that have decided to run because of deeply held convictions about supporting regular people, about they're all outsiders. None of them have ever run before, but they are all believers in what we all heard democracy was supposed to be about. And they just want to meet the needs of regular people. They want to provide health care. They want to provide housing, education. All the things that people need. And, the big thing about them is that they're not corporate Republicans. They are truly of the people, for the people. And if we elect them, we'll actually have a government by the people. Didn't we hear about that somewhere?
I think we did. At some point it was supposed to be We the People, but now it's We the People Incorporated, it feels like.
Right. It's we the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
What, five old white men on the Supreme Court decided that corporations are people and they're entitled to the same Bill of Rights as real people, and that money is free speech. And that's essentially destroyed the democracy. And now it's not rule of the people, it's rule of the money, for the money, by the money.
Yep, I said Citizens United, we've seen something like 900 times more or something like that. CEO salaries have increased, but wages are stagnant. Citizens United took our voice out of the game. It took people's voices out of the game. And with corporations, they want to extend the same Bill of Rights to them, but you can't arrest them, you can't take them to court, you can't hold them accountable. And when we do try, we usually fail because we have one of the most corporate-friendly Supreme Courts that this nation has ever seen throughout its entire history. So there's no voice for people in any of our three branches of government. But the one where we can get that back is the legislative branch. It is in Congress. And we've talked about ways to overturn Citizens United, but there's also legislative decisions we can make to fight back against Citizens United. But getting these big industries out of there is part of the way we win back our country. And especially with the military-industrial complex, something that's close to me and near to my heart is being introduced all the time as the anti-war candidate. Because I still have friends that are involved in the wars in the Middle East and that are still being sent to die, and whose kids are graduating into a world that is wildly different than it was when I was their age. And they're going off to fight and die in these same wars. And part of the reason why is because of that corporate hold on our representation, is that they're allowed to have the military-industrial complex keep funneling money to politicians and keep giving donations to people and donating to their campaigns, using all their independent expenditures to help them out. And they just keep these wars going, and no politician has brought forth a bill to end the wars in the Middle East because they're paid a lot of money to not do that. And the guy I'm running against, one of the things he says is corporate money doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I take it. It's all about how I vote, and et cetera, et cetera. And the fact is when I look at him, I'm like, look, the military-industrial complex is not paying you to end war. They're not paying you because of your track record on ending war and suffering of people around the world. And this is one of the biggest problems we've got. We've trapped ourselves in this economy of violence where we rely on killing other people in order for us to make a buck. And we have to shift our perspective. We don't need that industry of death. We can shift to things like a new Green Deal and infrastructure. We can shift to fighting for green energy and fighting for solar power, wind power, and hydropower. There are so many other areas of opportunity. And I talk all the time about a humanitarian military, but the thing, and everyone tells me it's naive, but the thing that people don't realize is China's already doing it. China's in these developing nations. They're helping them build up ports and build up infrastructure and build up these nations that are trying to develop. That's what they're doing because it's beneficial for their country, it's beneficial for their economy, and we're behind the curve. And it's good for us to be out there helping people because it's good for our economy, it's good for their economy, it's good for their country's health, it's good for our country's health, and it's good for our souls. And so I'm all about fighting back against that.
That's like a win-win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like having your ice cream and your Sarah. Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why I'm here, because of your position on the absurd amounts of money that we're spending on the military and on these, on these wars without end. I mean, it used to be that war was the most horrible thing, and that it was the thing that we only did as a last resort when all else failed, if we were attacked. And now war is the norm. People that are 18 years old today never lived a day in their lives when we weren't at war. And just like you said, Sarah, the Pentagon and the whole military-industrial congressional complex has now become a jobs program. And first of all, if we were to, instead of spending money on the Pentagon, if we spent it on education, healthcare, or green energy, we'd create a whole lot more jobs. But also, what is that? The fact that our economy is based on killing people and preparing to kill people, what a bitter taste that puts into the cosmic soup that we're all living.
Exactly. And I'd like you mentioned that the military's become a jobs program, because the thing I keep talking about is a federal jobs guarantee. And I mean, we talk about it like it's this crazy thing, but that's what we're already doing in the military. The only thing we're doing is, instead of employing people directly in trades, we're telling people you have to be willing to kill and to die for us in order to have a job. And I don't think that that's right. I think that that's preying on people who are trying to lift themselves out of poverty. I also think making people make that choice is not really giving people any kind of a real choice. And a federal jobs guarantee could do things like let us invest in infrastructure in a real way, and it would pull us out of that military economy. And part of the problem with the military economy that we've got now, and with the economy of violence we have now, is we keep talking about the Pentagon spending so much money and the DoD spending so much money. The Pentagon and the DoD have not been audited for over 30 years. So we don't actually know how much money they're spending. But we keep hearing, oh, it's going to come out, we're going to get the audit. They've been saying that for 30 years. And our representation lacks the spine to stand up and actually demand it. And then whenever we ask them about it, they're like, oh, it lacks the political will. And all I can think is, isn't that your job, to have the political will to fight for these things? And so I get really lit up thinking about it, because I hate that phrase, we lack the political will right now. That's your duty as a representative of this district to stand up and make the will. And the way you do that is you never let up. You be dogged, you be thorough, you be demanding, and you never let it slip out of the conversation. But we let too much fall to the back burner that matters. And, our representation is guilty of it here in the 9th District, and I find it disappointing, and I know we can do better.
Yeah. There was one proposal once that said that, well, we can go to war as long as the sons and daughters of our politicians are the first to go. The idea that we have a situation where wars continue to be a situation where we are creating enemies faster than we can kill them. I mean, Michael Franti, he's a singer. I mean, he came up with the line that you can bomb the world to pieces, but you can't bomb it into peace.
Exactly.
It doesn't take a whole lot of smarts to realize that, if we drop bombs that kill people's fathers, mothers, children, that creates terrorists. Clearly, the wars that we've been fighting for the last 18 years have not stopped terrorism, they've increased terrorism.
Yep.
So, I used to work with this admiral, retired admiral, and the way he put it is that we're creating enemies faster than we can kill them. And that's got to stop.
That's true today.
But the other thing that I think people don't realize is that the huge amount of money that gets spent on the Pentagon is inconceivable. The human mind cannot understand it. I mean, when you fully load the costs, it's over $1 trillion a year. And for that amount of money, we could have universal health care. We could have our schools being funded as much as they need to be. We could have decent housing for people. And we could still have the strongest military in the world. So,
I mean,
that's why we need elections.
That's why we need progressive representation in office. I mean, I think that's important too to remember is these things that we have been fighting for, they're not new. And these things that people want, like healthcare and education and housing, these didn't suddenly come up right now. We've known about climate change for decades, and we just have failed to do anything about it. And now we're at a head where we have to do something or we will die. These are not new things, but people act like these pieces of legislation are crazy or they're insane or they're too big and they'll never work.
Well,
it drives me nuts.
there's this fairly well-respected philosopher, Schopenhauer, who says that all truth goes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. So we're somewhere along that continuum.
Yeah, we're in that line, I think. Because now, 2 years ago, Medicare for All was insane. It was crazy. It's never going to happen. And now, the majority of Americans, including Republicans and independents and Democrats, want Medicare for All. They want single payer.
Well, when you look at these other countries around the world, countries in Europe that have, medical leave, maternity leave, paternity leave, and they have universal health care. Countries like France or Denmark or Norway or Finland, they're not doing so bad.
They're doing pretty well.
Their economies are fine. I visit those countries and, man, the quality of life there is at least as good as the quality of life here. And the big difference is that they're not blowing over 50% of the entire discretionary budget on weapons, on killing people, on saying that we should control the world. I'm always amazed at this number. I mean, the U.S. has like 750 military bases around the world. There's no other country that has anything like that. I mean, I don't know, maybe a few other countries have 3 or 4.
Yeah.
The U.S. says that our sphere of influence is essentially the entire world, and we have the right to regulate by force whatever happens around the world. And, that's absurd.
Just not true. I mean, the fact is, other countries have the right to self-determine and the right to autonomy just as much as we do. We escaped persecution when we first came over here and created this country. We were running away from persecution, from being told what to do by a country. That's why we founded a new one. And now we're trying to turn around and say, well, now we get to do it to you. And that's wrong. And the countries that are most successful are the ones that don't try to control each other. They're the countries that try to work together towards a common goal. And we can have peace, and everyone thinks peace doesn't exist, or they think I'm a tree hugger, and they think I'm too idealistic. But I don't think they're idealistic enough. I think that if you want peace to happen, you have to be willing to make it happen. And, you talked about how Al-Qaeda and terrorist groups, they thrive and swell when we're out there bombing the hell out of people, for lack of a better word. And we're killing their families, we're killing their loved ones. And I keep telling people, you don't fight a bad idea by bombing it. You fight it with a better idea. And when you're out there building roads and clean water and helping people, learn to make shoes and helping families learn how to farm and learn sustainable farming practices, and you're helping them build up the buildings we bombed down, it's a lot harder to sell us as the bad guy. It's a lot harder for people to hate us if they have something in their lives they can point to that was improved because of our presence. But because all people see is violence and death and fear, they put that on us because we created it. We did it. I mean, we see the Hondurans coming up here right now. The Hondurans are fleeing because of what we did back in the 80s when we completely destabilized the region. And everybody forgets that because our political memory doesn't go back that far, unfortunately. But I mean, this is what we do. We intervene and then we don't take ownership of what we've done. And I'm all about taking ownership of what we've done. I believe in the strongest military in the world taking ownership for what our leaders have made it do, and going out there and building up these communities that we've lost, and building up these countries that are suffering because of what we did. And nobody in Congress is willing to say it or willing to do anything about it. But that's why we need bolder representation who isn't afraid to say we made a mistake, we were wrong, and now we fix what we did. We fix what we broke. That's what we should be, a nation of responsibility, a nation of integrity, a nation that takes ownership of what it does. And the best way to do that is to use that same world's strongest military, kick out that 60% that goes towards those private contractors, put it back into our troops and their readiness and their preparedness, put it back into veteran services, make sure our veterans are getting taken care of, and then we go into those same communities and we repair the damage we did. We're going to build more allies than we're going to lose.
Yeah, we need to lead with our values.
Exactly. Everywhere.
We need to be people that are compassionate and caring. We need to lead from that space as opposed to the current administration, which is leading from a space of hate and indifference. So, to me, that's what your candidacy is about. Rejecting a national policy based on hate and indifference, and instead embracing one of love and compassion and caring. And to say that words like love and compassion and caring should not be what real politique is about, I think is a terrible mistake to think that we can get further through hate and indifference than we can through love and compassion. So
I totally agree. I think we are in an era of compassionate politics, and I'm excited for you to come on this journey into this compassionate era of politics with you.
Great to be on the journey with you too.
Thank you.